Welcome back to another episode of Liberty and Morality Defined presents. You must use the system to fight the system, so be willing to accept that the means do justify the ends. Agorist methods with some education are just not enough. That's a fairly common statement among a lot of advocates of liberty, particularly those whom are still exploring their philosophical roots, creating their philosophical foundations of thought, and trying to understand how to beat something that seems so overwhelmingly powerful. The fact of the matter is that saying we have to obey and comply with the system is to say we have to obey and comply with the armed gunman at a place of business we like to frequent. And the only difference is that few people likely want to risk taking on the gunman because they might be a casualty and not live to see the positive outcome. And while I agree that education and agorist methods are not the solution, they are part of the whole solution. It's a solution which includes learning patience, humility, and respect daily for ourselves first and then others second. However, working within the system still grants legitimacy to it the same way not confronting the armed gunman or robber does, or bickering with him to take less each time he shows up to threaten our lives by pointing his gun at us. And most importantly, don't withdraw just yet because of my invocation of the ideas of self-reflection through learning, patience, humility, and respect. These are not filler words designed to impress. They are carefully chosen because I've done something that I'm willing to argue most people, as in more than 51% of the population of the world, has not. I fully defined my life philosophy in such a way that it can be utilized by others and always be universally applicable, if not altered. And this starts something like this in relation to that armed gunman or law enforcer. The principle of respecting self-ownership, of respecting consent, is violated when that threat is issued by the gunman, when that gun is pointed, when the law enforcer enters into an interaction with you. So when the robber or the government decides it needs more, it brings more guns or creates more reasons built upon feel-good or, more appropriately, feel-bad emotions which cause people to avoid social ridicule for not helping the children or not protecting the less fortunate or even not helping the elderly. And these are used to justify more visits or convince others to be robbers, collect more loot, and share it with the promise that they will then do something for those who participate and later use that logic for why others should participate too. Now, many times people will argue about social responsibility and invoke the proclaimed social contract. Well, what is this contract if not another form of religion or a collective mindset? That's all it is. There is no consistency in what the social contract is built upon other than say, we must work together. Say a contract doesn't, such a contract doesn't specify why or how. All it does is to answer the question of whom it applies to, where it applies, and when it applies. And the answer is the same for all of these latter questions, within an arbitrary set of boundaries that can be acquired through violence or coercion of legalities. It doesn't talk about a universally applicable why. It does not answer the question of to promote peace, to promote and maintain and improve the quality of human life. Understanding why the social contract is important and how it is implemented is of paramount concern. Failure to acknowledge this is the same fundamental problem all religions have, and why people will embrace them or reject them. So why do people embrace religions? Because they profit from them. Why do they reject them? Because they lose to them. And yes, I reject the social contract because I recognize that I am losing to it far more than what I think I can gain by not having this social contract imposed upon me through what is called government. But I certainly don't want to prevent people from winning and profiting either. And I definitely don't want other people to lose to it. So my solution is to present voluntary interactions exclusively. The arguments, of course, will be that sometimes people need to be made to be generous or caring, and the answer to that is to leave those people alone. Everyone should be treated fairly and equally to encourage their potential for generosity, as I explained in my book, Morality Defined. So to answer the question of why the social contract needs to exist is to understand that it is about protecting human life from other human life and from nature that we cannot control, such as natural disasters. The problem is not in the noble intent to help people. The problem is in the means employed to help others. And now it comes to the question of how can we best help others? Well, if the means to helping one individual require the gun be pointed at another individual, then how is the individual in the sights of the gun being helped through compulsory means? Now, a part of this social contract is about protecting human life from other human life. If pointing a gun or raising a truncheon at a human life not responsible for the condition of human life requiring aid to continue on is not done in self-defense, how is this act not contradicting the purpose of the social contract invoked? Let me rephrase that real quick for you. How is the pointing of a gun at somebody who didn't do anything to hurt anybody else itself not hurting somebody who's innocent in this situation? How is it not hypocritical? And it is here that the defenders of social contract will say that that is not the purpose specifically or exclusively. They will say that there is more to it, and then they will answer everything but this question. Can you define the moral philosophy? Can you define your moral philosophy or what the social contract is specifically meant to be, and it be the same as everyone else whom invoked it? They won't define it. They won't make the time to explain it, or they will say it's subjective. Or they might even say, go read this book by so and so over here. Thus, we need to have government to invoke it so we can collectively participate to make it better. At least that's what they're going to say, because everybody comes up with something different. And that is why government exists. People invoke concepts they do not understand in order to justify continuing anything they think benefits them. They think in the moment. They think in the present. They think maybe for today and tomorrow, but they don't necessarily think clearly all the way through to next year, 10 years from now. They often seek this immediate reprieve of an uncomfortable situation in the moment, only to compound the issue with grossly inadequate critical thinking, which could have solved a problem sooner if they were patient and willing to deal with the unpleasantness in that moment. Meaning that instead of just walking away from somebody else outlining something, an issue or contradiction in their mind or in their philosophy, instead of walking away from that, they could have just, okay, why is it a contradiction? Can you help me to make this better? But they don't. In other words, people walk away from being ousted as philosophically incorrect or wrong before they admit to such, because they don't want to deal with that, because it's a sign of weakness, I guess. That people only do this because being seen as wrong is so difficult to accept in public light. Even in just a close circle of friends, it's difficult. It's almost as if such admissions are really a weakness, because we are an intellectual creature. So I guess making incorrect assertions gets people hurt or killed, and so nobody wants to be responsible for that. But make no mistakes about what I'm trying to help others understand. Philosophical consistency is tremendously important. If the goal is to protect human life from human life, then the means must match the goal. If not, then the parameters for which to achieve the means must be clearly laid out. And if the means say that one group of people may be extorted or transgressed to profit another, who's going to stick around to allow that? If Group B is told that they have to lose for a certain amount of time in order for Group A to survive, and then Group A is going to have to suffer when it's Group B's turn to be in charge, well, no wonder we have all this political BS and bickering in the world today. No wonder we have recent Trump rallies being all sorts of nasty and aggressive. No wonder we have Hillary supporters bombing Trump offices, if that's true. No wonder we have all this divisiveness, because everybody's trying to control everybody else, and they shouldn't be trying to do that. This is why people who advocate for a social contract or religion often fail to fully define their moral philosophy. They're too busy trying to be right instead of understand how to lay a clear path of thought progression to understand what it is that they're advocating. They typically do not have an answer for any of these questions, or they're willing to admit that they don't. And if they do, when inconsistencies are recognized in their positions, they turn tail and run or become hostile. So it doesn't matter that a vile act has turned into something good by pointing a gun at somebody and taking it and giving it to another individual. It matters that a vile act is used to do something good. And before it is interjected that a vile act can be used to defend, such as shooting somebody, murdering somebody in order to get them to stop murdering other people, no. That is called self-defense. Semantics about things that are regularly understood as acceptable shouldn't have to be explained every single time because of poorly executed linguistic tricks. Self-defense is such in this case because the global standard is that everyone wants to survive as peacefully as possible. To claim this is untrue is to say that a dog born with two heads is no longer a dog. It's still a dog with a mutation that makes it a little bit different. Therefore, the desire to hurt others, steal, rob, and enslave are false conclusions about how to successfully survive in a society that has to create wealth in order to maintain and improve the quality of their lives. If the creation of wealth is the key to survival, then stealing it from somebody else is hindering that creation of wealth. So why is this analogy important? Because people who invoke the social contract or religion as the basis of morality, they do not fully understand in general what they are conveying. They are almost always seeking to do good, but they don't understand or want to recognize a fault in their thinking for the reasons of social ostracism previously noted. This doesn't make them bad or vile people. It means that they are like us, requiring time, patience, compassion, okay, self-reflection, okay, to help learn. Just as with assuming people promoting something with negative unintended consequences are horrible, vicious, and mean-spirited minds, reduces their ability to reason and be reasoned with by not creating and working peacefully in ways that do not discourage the creation of wealth, these ideologically different minds, stealing, hurting, and enslaving others, diminishes their future returns on such interactions with additional unintended consequences. Let me restate that. When we dehumanize people for promoting things that they don't fully understand, they're less likely to learn. They're less likely to accept the fact that they could potentially be wrong. So when we make fun of them and call them things like stater tots or flaggots or anything like that, or when we call them foolish or stupid or idiot or dumb or anything negative or hostile, it makes them dig in their heels and they don't want to fight back. They don't want to learn. They want to fight back instead because they think they're being unfairly attacked. This is the concept behind blowback. It doesn't matter that these people don't understand. It doesn't matter that these people are doing something. It matters what they understand is the purpose behind what they're doing. And then it is to get them to understand that way there. This is true as people want peace of mind to know they can safely create. Yet the idea of the robber or government is that they somehow protect even those who dissent against them. Refuse to comply with something not given a peaceful choice to happily coexist with, and not having to relocate is not a duress-free and peacefully voluntary choice either. It's combative in nature. It suggests comply or we as a group will consider your right to life forfeit even though you don't or didn't do anything to actually hurt us. We will say you are hurting us by putting us at risk to a threat that in reality is just like what we are currently doing to you, but with other people who are not guaranteed to come invade us. Though we will not be able to fully prove it definitively, we haven't and are not willing to think of more inclusive and peaceful solutions, and don't care what you think because we are many and you are not. Now, obviously, supporters of government won't say that, but what they will say is, you'll never stop the robber without working closely with the robber peacefully because he is making the rules and controls his lackeys. You'll never end government without working within it. So the best thing to do is to donate back the stolen tax money to charity or something while working to dismantle the government. And why do they want to do that? Why do people want to say things like that? Because it protects their social acceptance. It keeps them in a crowd of intellectual like minds and doesn't actually risk their own lives. Remember, nobody wants to take a hit. They want everybody else to do it. So basically, when someone succeeds at getting them more freedom, they profit and make you a hero. If they understand that was what was done for them positively at all. So, for the reason I stated with the robber, and moral and philosophical consistency, is precisely the reason why working within the system will not end the system. Point out the contradictions and keep in mind that dismantling the foundation of government is a long-term solution, just as it is in crafting it as a necessity in the minds of generations upon generations. Working within the system for 200 plus years in the United States and 5,000 plus years of recorded human history worldwide has not yielded many decent results because of the justification of acting aggressively to coerce compliance with peaceful people for no other reason than to maintain control of them so their wealth may be used to pay others to control the potential threat of other rulers. Violence begets violence, and the perpetuation of fear cultivated into terror is required to override reason, because fear is always momentary. This is why government and its supporters always invoke the what-if scenarios of something nasty or destructive happening, of why they need regulations to ensure people are honest and safe. It is far past the point in the United States that one cannot sell anything without having to ask permissions because of tax laws based on local and state rules alone. Government supporters don't realize that saying people must submit, although they call it making sacrifices, in order to help the greater good, is really just a self-fulfilling prophecy perpetuating the fears by actually doing to some people what they fear others are only capable of doing to them, though that's not even a guarantee of happening when other people could attack them. Think about it. Who's going to invade the mainland United States? That quote by that Japanese admiral or whatever about a gun being behind every blade of grass in the United States, even if that's not true, the sentiment still holds very much true. Just like with some recently claimed reports about the UN going to invade the United States and go door to door taking guns from everybody. It's not going to work. The United States is far too big, and there's too many gun owners here. There will be a war if that happens. So legitimizing government to keep it or end it by saying it's okay to justify any means because of the goal is why government slaughters people in the first place. This has been true, and history shows it. This is always going to be true. Just following orders, just doing my job. Does that sound familiar? That's not sacrifice for anything worthwhile. To work within a system is to send a mixed signal, and one might as well start World War I again and send 50,000 more men over the trench line to be mowed down by machine gun fire for 5 feet of ground, which will inevitably be taken with mustard gas. Or retaken with mustard gas. That's not bravery, it's stupidity, absurdity, and absolutely counters the goal of peace, an order that is the noblest intent of government. All this, of course, despite the means to rob everyone beneath such jurisdiction, regardless of consent. But perhaps until people are able to clearly define a set of universally applicable moral definitions, they may not see this the same way. So, consistency is just as important as clarity, and working within the system is still dependent on oppressing people with taxation to do a good thing. The only difference is that others dependent on the system have already convinced those working within it to compromise their principles or be distracted enough to not clearly define them as they worry about fighting for something they don't clearly understand well enough just yet to explain simply. But for now, I'd like to thank you for your time. If you found this helpful, please like, share, and give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to encourage more content like this, please visit my website, jimlimberdavis.com, to explore more of my works, download free copies of my ebooks in PDF form, Liberty Defined and Morality Defined, and consider donating even just $1. Thank you for being part of a long-term solution starting today.